Hi, it's what is it? It's the 18th of May, and it is. Come on, Mickey.
It's 7:15. Good evening.
Did you hear that? You're looking all shocked.
Very
okay.
clear.
And
that was the real Mickey. That was the real Mickey Mouse, was it?
It has been licensed by the Apple Corporation. Yes. And welcome, Andy, to Geeks on Screens with Coffee. This is your first. I feel like we've met so many times virtually, a couple of times virtually, never in person. So it feels like that I kind of know you. But before we start, we'll see if people have started joining.
Yeah.
What, are you questioning whether we're online?
Yeah, I've got the little YouTube up on the left-hand side.
Online, we are online. There we go. I can see our pretty faces on there. It's delayed though, so it's about 30-40 second delay.
Mine is it coming through okay? Yeah, there we go.
No, honestly, trust me, I can see it. Believe me, I've done this before.
A professional.
I wouldn't say that. Okay, welcome, Andy. There is your name in magnetic letters.
Amazing. Have you not glued them on?
What? Fine. Right, I'm gonna try a trick. It might knacker the mic. There you go. Oh, you weren't even bloody looking. All right.
Andy Cutler. Oh no, it's a antler. We're getting there.
Oh, do you want to make them?
It's just gonna appropriately end up with ETL across the screen. No, but yeah, going back to what you said, yeah, sort of virtually.
Yeah. Yeah, all right.
I think it was
thinking sound and vision. Come on, don't rush me. Don't rush me.
Don't rush
I've had a week off. Before we, so what are you drinking? Geeks on Screens with coffee. Was that?
I am drinking coffee.
Was that deliberate? Was that going?
It's.
Look at my T-shirt.
It's the only one I own.
The only T-shirt you own.
It's the only T-shirt that I own, and it was. I'm so lucky to have received it from Microsoft. Otherwise, I might not be wearing anything at all. So it would be terrible. I am actually drinking coffee. I'm drinking iced coffee though.
Oh, okay. Did you make that at home, or did you? Oh, I haven't got one of those.
It's shop bought, so it's the kind of the pre-made caramel latte, you know, with the big fancy names that I've got quite addicted to. So it might be. Might be the sort of. I think it's just the sweetness. I do like it.
We're not sponsored, so feel free to say any kind of, maybe someone will happen to see it and then they'll sponsor it retrospectively.
No, I think it was just sort of generic Tesco ones, but they hit the spot.
Johnny W has they're getting a weird echo. Sorry, what was that? I'm getting Andy in real time and a weird echo from me. Oh, they might have some technical issues.
Well, hang on a minute. Does it fix it if I just put my headphones on?
Ooh.
No.
The problem is Johnny's about a minute in the past, so we're like a minute in the future. So we'll see if this fixes it.
Yeah, could be some feedback.
Yeah, I don't think it's you though, because I'm not getting it through my headphones, and I wasn't getting it through the YouTube. But if we were going to be sponsored by anyone, it would be clearly Nintendo.
Yes, and Sega. I did. I did used to work for Sega.
Really?
A good few years ago. Do you know Dave Morrison,
Yes.
T-Sequel Ninja?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I met Dave at Sega.
Sega.
So I started at Sega in about 2012 as data architect. This is Sega Europe, along West London, and Dave was, I can't remember which consultancy Dave was working for at the time, but he was essentially building a SQL-based data mart with analysis services for the finance department. And, I was brought in, I guess, because of my Microsoft skills. They wanted a little bit more of at the time, a Microsoft BI based platform. So obviously me and Dave hit it off, from the off in terms of, aligning technologies and all that kind of stuff. So, but I remember, I think you were doing a talk at one of the SQL bits. So I think me and Dave were both in a session watching. I think you were doing something around SSIS.
This wouldn't be the infamous, when I was doing Azure ML.
No. I mean, this is probably, a good 7-8 years ago.
SSIS.
I mean, I couldn't. Yeah.
I think
there's Demo Demons did visit you at some stage.
Oh well, they always come. I don't sacrifice enough to the Demo Demons. I laugh in their face.
And sometimes they're going to laugh back.
Oh, they do.
But no, we met on Twitter talking. I think I was engaging a lot with the Synapse Analytics serverless. I think we were having conversations back and forth.
Do you know?
And then all of a sudden I found myself on a call with yourself and Ginger Grant talking about latest Synapse Analytics features.
What they put?
I think source control had just been released. There was a lot of excitement about that. There'd been some
folders, I think, had come out at the same time.
Yeah, folders. So there was some exciting stuff, some Spark stuff, but I'm not a Spark person, I must admit. I kind of watch Simon Whiteley from Advanced in Analytics. I think, just go and watch Simon's videos on YouTube, and I think I get my Spark fill, to be honest. But and then I think you had.
Do you know what
created,
it was?
Or
do you know
what?
Yeah, it was I saw a tweet from you saying that some new features had come out. I think it might, and I hadn't seen it yet. And
yes.
And I was going, "Oh, this guy knows what he's talking about."
And I was incredulous, thinking, "How do you?" But I guess it's a big product, so lots of stuff goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I try and focus on a small bit, and just like you, I don't really do very much Spark stuff, although I have been dragged into a little bit. But I know enough to be dangerous, to make mistakes, and to do stupid things. But it's not. I couldn't really help very many people apart from the 101 stuff.
Yes, yeah. I think when you start, looking at massive amounts of data, mistakes don't really, could be costly. But what was quite funny, a few months ago, when I had a interview for a contract data engineering role, and it required a little bit of Python, but actually it turned out to be like 99% Python. And it was one of those interviews where that they asked me a question which was around, how would you approach a complicated PySpark implementation? And I sat there and I just thought, well, I'd probably back away from it slowly, turn around, run away, and let you get someone in who knows what they're doing. Yeah. I feel like I should know more Python. But see, this is why I've concentrated quite a lot on serverless SQL in Synapse Analytics, because it's SQL. I don't need to know any Scala or Python to get going. I love it. I think, if you want to move on to something like, Databricks and Spark, Spark is in Synapse, then great. But for me, as a SQL based developer, it's, I mean, we can use buzzwords and buzz terms like, barrier to entry and skill set is low, but it really is.
Well, and it costs very, very little. And that's certainly something that I'd certainly recommend people play with, rather than necessarily spun up a dedicated SQL pool, rather than a serverless pool. You've got to put the word pool in, because there is a serverless SQL.
I know. I do preface it with Synapse Analytics serverless SQL, but it's serverless SQL pools. But no, you're right on the costings, because there's no way around dedicated SQL pools. It's going to cost you, what, depending on where you are, £1 an hour plus the storage. I mean, I have scripts that that will bring up and tear down a dedicated SQL pool in a few minutes, because I would never keep one paused, for example, because I'm going to get charged for for storage. So I tend to destroy and recreate. But yeah, I found that I could easily, my own money, spend 50 quid a month on dedicated SQL pools in my own development. I mean, I have Azure credits and that kind of business, but if you're just getting into Synapse Analytics and you're looking at all the various different services, and you can see dedicated SQL pools and serverless SQL pools, and you think, well, how do I get started? I think serverless SQL pools is great, because, as you said, there's no cost to creating the workspace. You're going to pay for whatever storage you've got, and if you're only dealing with a few meg of test data, it's peanuts. And serverless hasn't cost me, I don't think I've even got into double digits. I don't even think I've got to about £10, and I've hammered that service in terms of just writing queries. And actually, when I spin up Studio to have a little play with something, the first thing I do is just use serverless, because I always have little questions like, oh, I wonder if I can do, it turns out I can, or it turns out I can't. And actually, I put out the first of a 3-part blog series around, creating a logical data warehouse. And, I had, people who I know more for Power BI, replying and saying, do you have, a resource that that I can learn from, and that kind of business. So lots of people want to engage with the service.
So we did have one question come in for you, which was how to handle surrogate keys in serverless and a logical data warehouse.
Is that from Johannes?
It was, yeah. And I think it would be rude not to answer that.
Yes, of course. So when I'm doing my second part in the series, probably the second paragraph. The first paragraph is recapping, right? You've got to say what the first part's all around, which was, to give it context, just connecting to the source data in Azure storage. And the scenario is essentially you've got CSV data, you've got source data, you know, let's say the data engineer or data analyst doesn't have any control over that source data, okay? And it's about connecting to and, you know, casting some structure using views over that data. So we're not actually loading any of that data in. So in the second paragraph, in the second part, I actually say, well, if we start extracting that data, transforming it, and then pushing it back to the data lake, are we breaking the concept of a logical data warehouse? So I think for some people and some scenarios, just getting up to that end of that first part, which is you've created some views over source data, and now you're aggregating that data, could be brilliant, could be fine. But there's an opportunity, I think, to take that data, transform it, write it back out to the data lake in Parquet format. You might not have control over that source data, but you will have control over what you can write back in terms of Parquet. So I'm thinking, oh, great. Okay, so you can write data back. So what we'll do is we'll denormalize our data. We'll take our, you know, 3 or 4 tables that make up a dimension. We'll join those together from the source views, and then we'll use the CTAS, the create external table, as select. Write it back to the data lake as Parquet. And I thought, okay, surrogate keys. In the Microsoft documentation, in the Synapse documentation, they have some best practices around, you know, serverless SQL, and they talk about co-locating the storage and the Synapse service in the same region to minimize data transfer costs. Authentication, so using the Azure storage SAS, shared access signature, is faster than Active Directory, and some of my tests, yeah, it is faster. One of those best practices is around data types, because the cost model in serverless is all around the amount of data that you've processed. So nothing about compute time, nothing about compute tiers like dedicated. It's like, how much data have you read? How much data have you written? So their best practice is, you know, use appropriate data types. Try and minimize that data type, and you're going to minimize your cost and also optimize performance. And they talk about using, you know, integers for joining. And of course, well, where have we heard that before? Data warehouses, surrogate keys. Then, based on I think it was a Databricks talk with, is it Denny Lee, around surrogate keys. You know, we've got how can we generate surrogate keys? You know, we can use row number, you know, we can use, you know, identity, we can use hashing, or, you know, unique identifiers. Is serverless, we're a little bit limited. So, you know, I plumped for 2 options using row number, you know, as you're selecting your data and as you're using your CTAS to write the data back to the data lake, you just introduce a row number, which creates an integer. Then in your fact load, you can just look up, as if you would just a regular SQL database. And it was that versus creating a unique identifier and then referencing that. Because I think the problem with using something like row number when you're generating the dimensions is it doesn't work that well, I think, for scale out architectures where all of the compute nodes that are dealing with creating these sequences of numbers, they kind of need to know what each is doing. So, you know, I think we're exploring, you know, the best way of doing it, but I've plumped with integers, because I don't think the overhead of creating the dimensions with the row number I think that is, in overall data processed, is probably better than creating a unique identifier, which is going to be a much bigger, will have a much bigger data length, and it'll impact performance and cost. So yeah, I'm plumping for integers for the surrogate keys, really.
And better on stats, I'd imagine, because obviously it's far easier to produce some good stats on an integer than stats on a. Bob Duffy saying hello. So I know Bob's 60 seconds behind. If you've got any questions for Andy, Bob, throw them in. Throw them in. See, I'm not normally watching the chat window. Sorry, Andy, I was slightly distracted.
So you're watching the chat window.
So if you're watching the YouTubes, you should see a couple of messages come up. And that was.
I'm not. I haven't got that. I haven't got that window up actually. I'll let you throw the questions at me completely unprepared.
That's the best way to be. Off the cuff, look surprised.
Exactly. I am really. But yeah, so writing that data back as Parquet. I mean, at the moment, you don't have much control over, let's say how many Parquet files are created when you push it back, but you've got control over the folder location that you put that in. I actually had a quick Twitter conversation with one of the people that work for Engine, the Howard's consultancy. They do a lot of Synapse analytics work, and I think I tweeted out something about incrementally loading using CTAS and serverless, and I was going to look at dynamic SQL because you couldn't parameterize where the location of where you wanted to put the data, and I think that's what they were plumping for as well. So I'm going to go with that. But ultimately, all of these things that I'm thinking about the service, I'm thinking, well, hang on, why don't I just put it together, get it out there, and then we can boil it down, discuss it, tear it apart. Because I'm genuinely sitting here kind of, coding away with it and thinking, well, let's get it out there.
So we've actually got some chat going on. Bob, I don't know what he looks like quite now, but I imagine he's looking pretty buff. Duffy.
I was going to say, I think Bob's profile picture is like weightlifting or something.
Yeah. Was asking, do you think that, and I'm laughing at this, serverless pools will be the death of dedicated? And I mean, you can have your opinion. I've got my opinion, and I don't think I can answer that question because
I don't know. No. I mean,
I think the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, and this goes back to, I think, conversations I've had is that I started using the Azure SQL Data Warehouse Service Gen 1. So it was the tail end of, well, it was about 2016, the tail end of 2016. And I was migrating an on-premise Oracle data warehouse into Azure, and the footprint was around 4 terabytes. So the data footprint was, relevant for generation 1, but it was its own big separate thing. Azure SQL database, there it was. The name was pride of place in the service listings. Skip to the rebrand of Synapse Analytics, and you've got Synapse Analytics, which is several components all in one. It's great they've brought them together. I really do think it's great they've brought them together. I just think dedicated SQL pools have kind of got lost in this other little SQL service. And I think we've had maybe this discussion before, but
I think
with dedicated
serverless is new, it's shiny, and there's a lot to learn, and it's really cool. I just think, and obviously, dedicated has been around for a lot longer. It's had,
Yeah.
I mean, Gen 1 had its issues. Gen 2 has got some other stuff, got some vast improvements, and then maybe in the future we might see some more. So I think that, a bit like Spark, there's a lot to learn and some really cool stuff in serverless, and I really love serverless.
I think it's a great addition to the toolbox, but to be honest with you, I don't really think I'd want a world without dedicated. I mean, I would love to see some quality of life improvements. I'd love to see the ability to scale without the service going down. I think that was, I remember, when we were working out our data load patterns and optimizing cost by only running the service, certain times, running the service at a certain DWU at certain times. There's no point it running at a high DWU when no one's using it. I just think sometimes the scaling, I'd love the scaling to be improved. But in terms of ingesting data, go on.
I can tell you why it's tricky at the moment. And that's just because of the architecture makes that very difficult to happen.
Yeah,
so
I appreciate that.
It's and if you've used it since Gen 1, and other people that have used APS and Parallel Data Warehouse, they'll talk about the 60 distributions, and it's a way that the compute nodes attach to distributions.
Yeah.
If you imagine that they're actually, each distribution is an LDF, NDF, I mean, not quite, but if you imagine it like that, the SQL process holds on to it and therefore can't release it. So it takes a fair amount of work to kind of rework that and make that work in a different way. But
I think, a succinct answer to Bob's questions. No, I think possibly serverless functionality.
So I think that they work together, and they work together really well, and they complement each other. And in fact, I think there will always be a space for the two.
Well, there was on Twitter, there was a discussion today around I wasn't in the discussion. It was I saw the various tweets, and it was around someone thought it was a good idea to replace the modeled data warehouse with exporting everything to JSON, and now it's all and just let Spark or let something else further down the line do the effort. But it's also what dedicated it's the thought process around when you use dedicated is that you're modeling your data as well. I'd like to think you're analyzing your data to understand how to distribute it. So there's a little bit more thought when you're using dedicated. Serverless, I'm not saying obviously serverless is not just a throwaway thing, but one of Microsoft's use cases is that ad hoc analysis. Throw a structure over some data, have a play. Dedicated, you're going to develop for it, but you're probably going to be a bit more considered in how you approach it.
Yeah. So Johnny was asking another question, and it goes back to, I didn't think we'd be doing this. I really thought I would just be geeking out and getting you to show me a ZX Spectrum, and that's not a euphemism.
But we can.
All right. Well, we're going to run out of time. I mean, okay. So Johnny was asking, is it always better to persist data by pushing it back to the data lake as Parquet as opposed to sticking it in dedicated? And then he's also added, coming from a traditional SQL Server DW background, and this stuff is new and it's making his head hurt.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, Johnny, if it makes you feel any better, it makes my head hurt. And I've been doing this stuff for years. You know, there was something. Was it? I think Paul Andrew. You know, I know Paul Andrew for his work on Data Factory. So he's a consultant, you know, and puts out a lot of great content on Data Factory. And he tweeted a picture of Microsoft's sort of architecture for the modern data warehouse. And because Microsoft have got a great, it's the architecture center, where you've got all sorts of patterns. So, streaming data, clicking the streaming data, and they'll give you the technology that you can put together. And this diagram, it was boxes and arrows everywhere. And you're like, oh, okay, Spark doing that. And then that going in up to, I mean, it's obviously an architect's dream, of whiteboarding this thing, but it was immense. So I think that was sort of overwhelming to see that picture. Now persisting data back. Now again, it kind of goes back to the kind of highly modeled / loosely modeled thing, which is if it works in the scenario to write it into, you basically use serverless SQL as the data processing engine, put it somewhere that can be ingested into dedicated SQL. I mean, you can't natively push anything from serverless SQL directly into dedicated. You'd have to use pipelines to do that. I would have thought, have a pipeline that that triggered a stored procedure that was stored in serverless to do that processing, and then load it into dedicated. But if we're talking about data that we do want to run some analytics on and model on, and we don't really want that overhead of writing it into dedicated, then it's based on the scenario. So right? If you're going to transform some data, write it back, it may be good enough for what you need it for.
It's if you're working in serverless, and when you were talking about writing it back, in a different format, Parquet is better because it's compressed. So because you get charged for the amount of data effectively you read off disk. So there are advantages when you're storing it back as Parquet.
Yeah, of course. But, size. Obviously it supports the filter predicates. So when you're selecting columns, your where clauses can be pushed down as well. So
I mean, it might be when you say he comes from a traditional SQL Server data warehouse background, that might be running on SQL Server rather than running as a a SQL DW.
Well, I mean that's my background as well. When you sit there designing a data warehouse, and then you're designing your partitioning strategy, you're designing where your data files are going to sit. I don't think I've had to look at any of that stuff for a long time.
Bob's popped another message in the chat saying, where do we think serverless would be if we drew a Gartner hypercurve? So I presume, where would it be in the quadrants of functionality?
Oh, that hype, is it the hype cycle? Hype cycle.
Yeah, I guess.
I guess as the technology itself, I'm not sure. Are people like actively engaging with it and using it? I know a couple of people are.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
But it is serverless SQL pools? Is it coming under the sort of the concept of the data lakehouse?
Oh.
Which is very, very much on the hype cycle. I did my master's project last year on the data lakehouse concept, but it was using Databricks and Delta. So I'll look at it.
It makes a bit of sick. It makes a bit of sick come up when
there's something stuck in your throat.
Whenever someone mentions lakehouse, data lakehouse.
Yeah, I think that is, that is on the hype. But then, but why not? Why not? Why not bring transactional consistency to data that's in the data lake that might not yet be modeled in a data warehouse?
Yeah, you're pretty much you're getting in the realm of Delta then, really, aren't you? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not sure there's anything else that
Yeah.
competes or is the
So
same.
yeah, so here's the thing: is serverless going to support? It's a rhetorical question. I know you can't really answer that, but I know there are some ways and means of serverless SQL pools to talk to Spark tables that have been created, but there's no native. There's no native
Yeah.
no native functionality for Delta yet. So, would Microsoft take that Delta format and incorporate it into serverless? I mean, there's going to have to be quite a lot of advancements in terms of writing data out as well.
So here's a challenge. All right. So there is the Open Delta standard, which Databricks
Yeah.
have opened up, and so anybody can use that and incorporate that into their projects to write, to read Delta. I'm not sure about writing, but I presume writing. Otherwise, it'd be a bit daft. Then there is some secret source that Databricks keep back that isn't in the Delta code to make it go really fast and to do some other stuff to it.
Yeah.
So,
but of course they would do that though.
But then it's not in the open standard. Then you really want it to be open; anyone can use it.
Yeah, but I can see it from their perspective. I mean, I can see it from their perspective as to why. What is it? Is it version 0.6 Delta that's currently what it was last year?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, look at Synapse and Spark. I mean, that runs what 2.4.
Yes.
I'm getting out of the realms of my knowledge here because, like I said, I'm not much of a Spark aficionado. But then, if you're running Spark workloads,
so
you'd want.
Isn't build coming up soon?
Oh,
I just need to check the date on that.
I think it's next week.
Is it build next?
Who is it next week?
Almost like he doesn't even know.
Here's a hot topic on serverless that gets brought up every so often on Twitter. Cache. A cache for serverless. So every time you run a query, even if that data has not changed, even if it's exactly the same query, you're going to get charged twice. So Snowflake, I think Google BigQuery, they've all implemented some sort of caching. And I'm just saying, that's all. It would be nice. I would be nice. I remember your answer was something like, we'll just use dedicated. But
that's the answer right now.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just say right. I don't want to get told off. I can't say so.
No.
I'm sure it's been thought about, and whether or not it was like it's going to be done later. Let's get the first version out there and see what happens after it. But I think I also added in that actually caching is quite hard because you need and it's not a Synapse problem or a serverless problem. I was talking about this with a guy who works for another company that does query over data lake. That you need hooks back into the storage layer to tell you when that storage has changed. So you can have a really simple caching model, and as a developer, I've done this where I've gone right. I'm going to cache everything for 5 minutes in an in-memory cache on the web server or something. And so it doesn't matter if the data changes underneath, I won't get those updates because I'm going to cache it. So for some data, that's fine. But as an app developer, I know what's important. I know what isn't important. But if every time you've got to check somehow that bit of storage, and that could be a massive folder structure or whatever, I can imagine that is a technical challenge. I'm not part of that team or no, but I'm just thinking about how would I, if I was writing that, how would I implement that?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's just one of those things that gets brought up every so often. But going on from, or sort of moving away from Synapse and serverless, because I think we've. How long have we got, by the way?
I mean,
Have we got
really,
until have we got until quarter past?
well, I mean, we could go to quarter past almost any hour you like, but I try and keep it down to like an hour. But normally we haven't had this much interaction with the audience, so it's really their fault. It's Bob
Yeah,
and Johnny's fault that
yeah,
kept
I
us
think
chatting.
that yeah, I think the hours will be dinner time, surely. But yeah, you were talking about all the stuff in the background
All
because
right, let's. There was another topic I wanted to hit first, which was something that we've talked about, which is the difference. So during the pandemic that we've had,
mm,
you know that thing that's been going on.
that thing.
You were saying that people like yourself, you've started speaking. So in fact, that your speaking background is purely remote, like this. Well, not even like this.
Yeah,
You don't even see the audience. Well,
no,
actually, unless you, I mean, but actually, no. Tell me what when you present, do you see the audience, or are you just
no,
presenting? You don't even get the little kind of pictures, or
no, because I guess it depends on if people have, if people are enabling their cameras. I mean, most of the time it isn't, you know. So yeah, we were talking about this because essentially, the conversations that I see on Twitter, you've got sort of two groups. You've got the well-established speakers that have been, you know, doing events for years, and it is a little bit heartbreaking on Twitter when people who know each other from all different far-flung corners of the world, you know they've been getting together at conferences and having fun, and that was taken away. And and you see those interactions on Twitter where people are sad about not being able to see the people that they would normally all come together and and have some drinks and just talk about life and the technology and advances and all that kind of stuff. And I see that. And then let's say myself and a few other people that I know on Twitter that I feel have just started speaking in the last few months, certainly during the pandemic when it all went remote. And yeah, it was when events are in person again, what am I going to do? I, I tend to find that I've got this kind of a little bit of a separation from everyone that makes it a lot easier. It simply makes it a lot easier to present something because there could be one person, 10, 100. It doesn't seem to make a difference. I kind of pick, I'm going to deliver this to one person as if I'm talking to them and teaching them, and it flows a bit better. I don't know what's going to happen if I if I submit to an in-person session and I get accepted and I turn up and there's 100 people in a room all looking at me. What will I do? Will I faint? Will someone be waving some some salts under my nose saying, Andy, well, you were halfway through talking about data process costs and then you just passed out. It was an observation more than a question. Is that I see a lot of people on Twitter who I'm very much missing in-person events, but and that's understandable. But obviously being very patient for everything to open up again, and then everyone who's been speaking virtually, what their level of excitement or what will happen when it's all in person again. Yeah, it was just a thought.
it is. I mean, it is a very different skill set presenting remotely and
Yeah.
presenting in person, and I miss that sort of. And what is also different, and I've noticed this is different when you're in a different size room or a different venue. It actually feels very different, and even like presenting on a Saturday to presenting like at SQL Bits or presenting at something where people have paid to presenting when it's free. And when it's free, they haven't paid to be here.
No, don't tell me that, Mark. That isn't the attitude. Surely.
I can have a lot more. I treat them differently. So as if you paid, it's going to be a bit more professional, and if it's free, then I'm going to have a bit more fun.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Such as I can't remember what I did. I had a beach ball and I was throwing it around in a conference or picking on
Right.
particular people. And I was I was insulting the audience.
Having fun with them.
Yeah, because they didn't laugh at a joke. I made a bad joke they weren't supposed to laugh at, and then it's a very simple stick of trying to break the ice with the audience of saying, right, well, right, no one laughed, right, that's the best joke I've got, right, so you're not going to get anything better. So trying to break that barrier down, because obviously, it's like presenting in the UK, people don't, depending on the topic, it might be hard for people to ask questions. Sometimes you find that they will ask questions, sometimes you find they won't. And then people come up to you at the end. But I kind of, if I enjoy it, then that's the main thing. Here's a question. Yeah.
Here's a question for you. Have you ever been heckled?
Heckled.
Let's say sort of, not a joking heckle from someone but someone that you're like, ooh, right. What's happening? Like a comedian.
So the reason why I was checking when you saw me, so probably the worst thing that's happened is someone got up and walked out.
Yeah, right.
Demo gods hit really badly, and I decided to do, instead of going, it was a busy room. Instead of going, let's stop, I'll just reboot, I'll sort it out. I thought, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to drive through this. And the sweat, starts building, and you're panicking, and you're someone just getting up in the middle of your session, like walking out, is murder.
Their silence spoke volumes.
It's just like, I mean, it's going so bad they're not even being polite enough to stay with me to the end.
Or even just a little sort of thumbs up to say, keep going, and then just walk out.
Yeah, everyone else was polite enough to stay to the end. And Dave went, I'm sure, it went really badly, but I'm sure you're a better presenter than that. And it was just trying to make me feel better. It just made me feel worse. What have you been? Random things get thrown in chat windows, and that can be distracting. But have you been heckled then?
No. It was not. No, because obviously I think I've only presented like 2 in-person events, like a few years ago, and that was just some people at Microsoft. It wasn't, it wasn't anything that would ever be conducive to that. But no, nothing.
I do have I think a couple of stock lines though.
Yeah.
So I used to have this slide that I would bring up at the beginning, and it would say, this is the jargon that presenters use, and it would say, we'll take that offline, means I'm gonna Google that and we can talk about it afterwards.
Well, yes.
Yeah. And so I would use, and that's an excellent question, means the answer's on the next slide. And I would use this like little slide of jargon. And, I had a great time, and so when someone then says, right, oh, what about this? I go, I think we'll take that offline. Then people that remember, the first slide at the beginning, chuckle.
Yeah.
Because it means I haven't got a clue.
Yeah, but I guess sort of, I think, acknowledging that, we'll take that offline, and then hopefully they don't.
So what I have and ask you is 2 people were talking in the audience while I was presenting. So I went and sat down next to them and said, I'll just wait for you guys to finish.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That was quite passive aggressive. Probably didn't go down too well, but
Yeah.
I have threatened to take people's phones off them. So I did say, look, just put your phone on silent.
It's justifiable.
You know,
I think that's justifiable.
Put it on. You can text people, whatever. You can use your laptops, but just don't interrupt anyone else. And then someone, I said, look, if the phone rings, you will have to answer it in front of everybody. And then someone let their phone ring, so I can't look like someone who's weak. So I've got to go up to them to maintain my authority in the room and say, look, you got to answer that phone. I mean, they didn't.
And it was someone on the phone saying, "Is that Mark still talking?"
No.
It was some sort of Christopher Nolan film that looped in on itself.
What I did do was, if you ever present in Reading or a conference, where the rooms are very close to each other.
On the Microsoft campus.
Yeah. I don't know if the Chicago 1 and 2, I think they're called.
Times, yeah.
But any kind of conference or whatever, there were two rooms next to each other. I got the room to cheer really loudly at certain points. I said, just to make the people in the other room feel like they're in the wrong session.
But then, that's terrible.
It amused me.
Terrible. Fake, fake news.
I did, but I played it like a pantomime, going like, everybody, just cheer, whatever, just to let them know. And I went, and then they do a really wimpy cheer. I go, I can't hear you.
Right.
Yeah. And I did
you have like a little did you have a puppet with you as well, trying to sort of talk to you at the same time as you were presenting?
I've done that a couple of times.
Oh yeah, and the face hugger. I think it was the face hugger.
Yeah.
And Baby Yoda in the back. Yeah. I do have a Baby Yoda. Ooh. He's not in the background. I think my 4-year-old has nabbed my Baby Yoda.
Is that a proper whatever it's called, the child? Is it a proper? Because you can see from the colouring that's not licensed.
I think it. Yes, I think it's a licensed.
Yeah, that
licensed one.
That one isn't.
Yeah. Don't worry.
So all right, let's go away from all the techie stuff. Right now, it looks like you've got one of those handheld games from like the 1980s, like that we used to like. Maybe not quite Donkey Kong. What was on one screen?
Yeah, well, it's actually a Nintendo released them a few months ago or last year or something. It was a 35th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers. So it's not. I don't think there's actually any power in there, but yeah. So it's a kind of a clock, and
Is it actually Super Mario Brothers on there?
Yes. I think it's the sort of the first one that's on the old NES. But,
so you've got
you were interested about the Spectrum, weren't you?
Well, I of course. I mean, I don't.
Oh.
Did you? I presume that's an eBay, or is that your own one you've kept?
It's not my original one. No, not my original one. But just to have it for nostalgia's sake, I think.
Have you turned it on?
Yes, it works. And actually, if you put the games on, let's say, an iPod, and you connect the headphone into the Spectrum, you can play the games into the Spectrum faster than a tape player can do it. I think you can do it something like 8 times quicker, and it'll actually load the Spectrum games a little bit quicker. But no, it's purely for nostalgia purposes. My dad, I came down on that Christmas morning, whatever it was, 1985 or 86 or something like that, and there was the Spectrum with a few games that just came with it, but the big book of BASIC, that. And obviously here is a copy of it, and obviously I guess my dad's motives was that I was going to learn BASIC, and I'd be the next Bill Gates. The problem was I got really irritated with the fact that all the words like go to and print are printed on the keys. And what you need to do is you need to find the key that it's on and press another key and press it. So you can't just type them in. So after probably a week of doing this, I thought, well, I'm not doing this. This is far too much effort. And I started playing games. So, that pipe dream disappeared. And I ended up just playing games on the Spectrum and then buying consoles rather than computers. But yeah, so it's purely for nostalgia purposes. And there's been there's all sorts of projects now on Kickstarter to recreate the old consoles and plug them into HDMI. I mean, I've got a little Raspberry Pi that sits under the TV downstairs, and to be quite honest with you, the quality and all the different settings and filters, yeah, it's lovely having the original stuff, but it's much more convenient having a little something that sits under the TV, and upscales pretty well too.
Yeah, well, it's better to play it, on an emulator than it is to play it on the original. I mean, it's not quite the same rustic feel. Playing on rubber keys, playing Daily Thompson Decathlon, smacking keys or breaking a Kempston joystick.
But things like, so a lot of the CD-based consoles in the 90s, the PlayStation, the Sega Saturn, how long can original hardware last? I think emulation is essential. It's cataloging. It's like a library of hardware and a library of of software, really. So it has its place. It's just having the physical collection is nice to have the things, and I guess my little home office, I can't have books behind me. I do have just so that some people can take me seriously, I do have some of the Kimball books back there. Like 4 Kimball books and 1,000 video games, as if it's going to make a difference. Anyone's going to say, hey, look at that guy over there, he's professional. But the books are over somewhere else. I can't. It would be quite awkward to try and just sort of get the books in. And hey, I'm just going to be honest. I can pull anything back there and just have some fun with it. And the kids, they love to engage and have a little play. We've got something called Donkey Konga.
Donkey Konga.
Go with this. Go with this. So it is on the GameCube, and it's a pair of bongos, and it's a music rhythm game. So it's got all sorts of tracks on it. I think it's got something like All Right by Supergrass and all that kind of stuff. And as Donkey Kong on screen is telling you to do something, the kids are like then hammering and clapping. So it is really good fun to introduce them to some of the old stuff.
That's a precursor to Guitar Hero then, effectively.
Oh yeah. I never really had Guitar Hero, to be honest with you. But I know of it, like boss battles using a plastic guitar.
Yeah.
It was quite funny. But yeah, you said to me earlier, what was Mass Effect? So I guess you're not really into your games.
No, but not at all.
No, there was a much anticipated remaster of essentially it's a science fiction game, where you are traveling the universe, solving puzzles and essentially saving the universe, saving mankind from destruction, and engaging in sort of cringy dialogue. But it's a fantastic universe to get drawn into. It's got plenty of backstory and plenty of lore, and that is, you can purely geek out on that, I have to say.
So this is what, more advanced than Elite? So
yes.
So
Even there's a new Elite that came out a few years ago.
yeah,
Elite
Frontier, wasn't there?
No, like Elite Dangerous or something like that.
Okay.
I've never really played Elite. I have to admit, but yeah, there was a game only a few years ago. But I think I remembered playing. Who was it? David Braben that
Rings a bell.
him, maybe him and someone else single-handedly sort of programmed the game. Well, it was procedurally generated, wasn't it? So every time you played the game, all the planets and systems would be just generated on the fly.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, awesome achievement back then.
Well, you only need to generate the bit that you were sort of interested in, so you didn't need to it's a bit like Minecraft, only generates enough for your vicinity. Otherwise, there's no point fitting in a universe into the amount of RAM in a Spectrum. You can't.
So yeah.
It's
but it gave planets, like planets as a good because it's just randomly generating names.
Yeah, I remember that there was some standard species. Remember there was like a feline creature or species, and then you could buy certain ores or whatever. You could mine things. You had to get fuel for your spaceship. I just remember playing it and then having, because you didn't have a hyperdrive or whatever the engine was, you'd have to sit there and press a button for it to go quicker as you were flying through space. So so you'll be there for like 15 minutes with your finger on a button.
Did you have, because I sort of associate that game with the BBC Micro, which was, I think at the time, it was like that was the Rolls Royce. I think you only ever knew one person that had a BBC Micro. I certainly did.
You were very lucky because they're quite expensive. A Model B was quite expensive.
I wouldn't even know what Model B was.
The Model B was one you had in schools.
Yeah, probably that one.
And the monitor was this square box.
Yeah,
TV.
I remember a really cool flight sim on it, actually. I mean, well, flight sim. A few lines that moved like that as you came into land.
You kind of look at games now and then you go, wow, because you with the playability on a Spectrum or on a BBC was great, and when you look back at it, you go, no, my imagination filled the rest in. No, Jet Set Willy was just, it's all right, but it's not great.
Yeah, I mean, there's nostalgia, and then there is, yes, it's genuinely good. So you can go back and play the original Super Mario on the 8-bit NES, and it's still great. If you go back and play some of the stuff on the Spectrum, I have to say, it's the first, computer that I had. But wow, I don't really think I'd like to play any games on it. Now, maybe Horace Goes Skiing. Maybe Horace Goes Skiing. No, Planetoids. Planetoids, which was the knockoff Asteroids. Me and my dad played Planetoids for hours.
So maybe we're in person. I'll tell you how much of an insane geek, but I wrote a version of Horace Goes Skiing on my Commodore. So effectively,
wow.
So I wrote my own games because I didn't have that much money to go and buy games. So
hey, perfectly respectable. I love that.
My first fighting game was it was a stick figure, like a zero with a pipe, then chevrons for arms and legs, and then when you kicked, the chevron turned into an underscore.
Yeah, no, but you see, innovation.
But I didn't have anyone. But I didn't have anyone to play. But you did go, well, I'm writing a platform game, so I need a platform. Then I need to write some form of gravity, but I also need some collision detection underneath. So I stopped falling.
Solving problems, but making the game.
Yeah.
No, I never did any of that, unfortunately. I think I tried to do it once and gave up.
A lot of persistence. All right.
Yeah.
We are. I know you've got your kids are going to bed soon, or they're already in bed. Shh.
I hope so. Hopefully they're already in bed.
Okay. Let's do.
So what is that?
Johnny's still with us, and Lewis. So someone from work is watching. The cheering thing is evil genius. What cheering thing? Right. And Johnny remember playing RPGs on the BBC at school. Of course, yes, BBCs were a beige colour.
Yes.
If you were cheap, you had.
Yes.
If you had lots of money but not
Black
enough to buy a
keys.
BBC, you had an Acorn Electron.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Richard Herring's emergency question book.
Oh, I do like Richard Herring's podcasts. Yeah, he does with various people.
I've got to play amazing. I don't know which sound effect I'm playing. You are the first person to know of Richard Herring.
Richard, but like, I think I've watched like a couple of Geeks on Screens with Coffee in the past. I'm like, Stuart Lee, Richard Herring. I mean, that was Sunday morning. I think was it Sunday morning with Richard, not Judy. I mean, the Curious Alien.
The Curious.
That was priceless and actually required hangover telly. I mean, I saw Stuart. I haven't seen Richard Herring live. I've seen Stuart Lee live.
What, Leicester Square?
Yeah.
Which did you see? Tornado.
Probably about 3 years ago. I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. I'll find out.
Was that the you killed? You all killed. You all. Oh, who was it? Robin Williams, when he's talking about the ghosts of the past.
Possibly. I'm going to have to look up what it was. But no, Richard Herring's podcast. There was a really, I'd say, a slightly awkward one a while ago with Dominic Diamond from Games Master fame.
It's that there have been some. The Annika Wright one, which was a few weeks ago, was really good.
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet.
And she, even though she doesn't quite get the problem is, you've got to understand that it is a joke and you not to take anything seriously. But so he put together. This is his book of emergency questions. I'm a fan of Stuart Lee and Richard Herring. And I have seen Stuart Lee a few times, but I find Stuart Lee is a really good actor, and that's something that doesn't quite come across. And he will, he controls a room. So I was. So when I said I was insulting the audience, I was actually stealing some of. I mean, literally, well, not quite stealing, but I was taking some of the stuff that he does, where he will. And from pantomime, where I was going.
It is our fault, really. It is our fault, and I think we are. We deserve it. I think.
I think there's a really big crossover, because presenting is presenting, whether you're doing comedy or whether you're getting information across. That there is a skill and an art to it.
Yes.
Which So you'll go and see some presenters like Buck Woody, who's really got that down.
They got the pizzazz. Yeah, Grant Fritchie. Yeah, really, really got that spark where you just want to listen to what they're saying.
Yeah,
I mean, Buck Woody could read a recipe book.
Yeah, I'd
go and listen to it.
I go and so when I'm at in-person conferences. You'll go, right, is this a good topic? Yeah, no. And I'll go down. I'll go, do I like that speaker? I don't know what they're talking on. I'll go and watch them. And to be entertained. All right. So 1001 questions. So the idea is that you pick a number between 1 and 1001. And as long as it's not too rude, I'll ask a question. If it might be a bit of a dead end.
Yeah, okay.
But go on.
Let's go with 250. No reason.
Oh, I mean, literally, I do ask whether So 250 is. Ooh, these are in the two. Okay.
Go on.
It's really simple. Why can't we live forever?
Why can't we live forever?
Sort of.
Number one, I think we go mad, surely. Number one, if we lived forever, then the Earth would be destroyed under the weight of the sheer amount of humans that there would be. Philosophically, if we did live forever, surely we would all stop caring, because you're just going to live forever. There's no consequence. There's no tomorrow, because tomorrow doesn't exist. It just extends for infinity.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say we can't live forever because the Earth would explode.
There wouldn't be. You're saying there wouldn't be enough resources?
Yes.
Because otherwise, it would either you'd run out of resources or you'd run out of standing room.
I think you'd run out of resources first, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We run out. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like the Simpsons, the Earth would just catch fire. It would just explode.
See, the problem is, I don't like ending the podcast on a bit of a downer. So, should we try another question?
Yeah, go on then.
That seems just a bit dark. So he's got some favourite ones. So, have you ever flown a kite?
Yes.
Good. I mean, you don't have to elaborate. You can just then.
Yeah, that's near where I live, Dunstable Downs, which is a really really windy place. A hill that kind of just drops off, and you can get some serious air with a kite there. Get it up, swirl it round. Yeah, fantastic.
I bought a kite once because I'd never had a kite when I was younger. About 15 minutes in, the bugger crashes to the ground and one of the struts snaps. I mean, it wasn't expensive, 20 quid or whatever.
But still, I remember when I lived in London, I was near Old Street, just up from Old Street, and my mate, who I lived with, one of his friends came down, and I think he was either going on holiday, driving to France, something like that. But he had one of those huge double-handed kites, the ones where you see, on YouTube, people just being lifted up and they're off. They're 50 foot in the air. So we took this thing to Hackney Fields. So we're trying to string out this huge kite and get it going. As maybe we've got maybe a can of cider on the go, because we're early 20s, we're mucking about, and people are just watching us like, what are you guys doing? Just as we throw this thing up in the air and it catches a bit and then it doesn't, and then it catches a bit and it doesn't. And then I think after about an hour, we just gave up with it. But yeah, so nothing snapped that day probably our nerves. Trying to get it working. I mean, there was virtually no wind, so I've got no idea why we thought it would work anyway.
Right. I mean, how often do you have a large kite? I guess that was the thing. And then
exactly,
you've got to. It's not one of those things you can just. You either got to carry it with you, because it's an opportunistic thing. You can't just go. Let's go out for a kite, fly a kite, like you can go out for a bike ride.
No, he was very specifically taking that somewhere to, go off a cliff or something like that, and sort of base jumping.
So Johnny has mentioned Fist of Fun. We forgot about Fist of Fun.
Yes,
I do have a Fist of Fun DVD up there.
Wasn't there an annual that you could buy as well? Like you could get the Beano, the Beano albums. I think there was a Fist of Fun annual.
There probably was. If you go to gofasterstripe.com, That's where Richard Herring sells a lot of merch, and he also sells stuff on his eBay.
Oh, okay.
So you can pay to be a monthly badger, and you get like access to kind of early stuff. But it's well worth turning up to the. Well, I mean, the gigs are restarting now. So the podcast, the live recordings of the podcast are starting up in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But you've got to be close to London to make it worth going.
Yeah. Okay.
And really, kind of, it would just be so much of an effort to get down there, stay. For me to get down there and get back in, and it's just not practical in an evening.
Oh no.
Right.
No, I remember. Yeah.
Go on. You remember what?
No, I was there when David Bowie passed away. Yeah, it's probably was 5 years ago now. Adam and Joe. They do Adam and Joe.
Oh, of
Adam
course,
Buxton,
Adam
Joe
Cornish. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously Adam Cornish has been, his his kind of directing career, and
Yeah.
Adam's been doing Adam Buxton's been doing various
He's got
podcasts and things like that.
Yeah.
But that he loves David Bowie. Absolutely loves David Bowie, and I think at the time, Adam Buxton was doing this in-person event called Bug, and he'd do various different things. The one where he reads out YouTube comments, it's on YouTube, but he's reading out YouTube comments about a song is just, it just makes me cry with laughter. It's brilliant. But he'd put together a Bug special on David Bowie, and we got tickets. Managed to get tickets for it, and I was looking forward to it so much. And then going into London, all the trains went wrong and they were cancelled. And it wasn't something that he was doing the next night and the night after. It was that night, and then he was doing one in Norwich, because I think he lives.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't live far from where we are. He lives the other side of Norwich. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could, I'm there on the platform, and I'm like, he's only doing this once, and
But did he not have trouble getting into London then?
No, because he's obviously in London.
Oh, okay.
So
yes,
that was yeah.
I listened to the Adam Buxton podcast. You always get that first bit when he's out with Rosie.
Yes, yeah. Have you? Well, it's much better to listen. Have you listened to his book?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, it's very good. It's really poignant about his dad as well.
Oh, okay.
And about his relationship with his dad. Not sort of overwhelmingly sad or anything like that, but just observationally very, very good. And I just, it was one of those things where I had to ration myself listening to it, because I think it's about 10 hours long. So I was like, right, I'm not going to listen to it all in one go, because I cannot take it all in. But it's so if you get chance, I can't remember what it's called, but it's his book from last year that he obviously reads. I think it's available on Audible. But yeah, that's really worth it.
I was debating it. I mean, when my Audible credit comes round, I sometimes know exactly what I'm going to get if I'm on a series of books, and sometimes I'll be in a phase where I don't know, what should I get, and then
I'll recommend it. Yeah,
but definitely I'll get it. I mean, I've been listening to some trash recently, just some really light-hearted stuff. That I probably won't admit to listening to on this. Well, I'll save it. I'll save it for when we finish, and then I'll tell you how trashy it is. Imagine,
and then I'll tweet it. No, I won't.
Yes. I'll deny it.
Don't worry.
Whatever it is, I'll deny it.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Annie, I think it's and thanks everyone for watching. Bob, Johnny, Lewis. Who else commented? Benny. Probably one of the busiest chats we've had.
Brilliant.
Yeah, which is
It's
a surprise because I was
fun.
I was debating not doing this live.
Right. Well, there you
before.
go.
Yeah. Well, clearly, I'm such an idiot. I made a mistake. So clearly, we'll stay live. All right. Well, thank you for your time, and we're going to do showbiz goodbye. And
Goodbye.
And if shall we do it in the style of Adam Buxton?
Love you. Bye.
Bye.